My name is Justin Sturgeon. I'm the campus pastor at ECC Kuna. About 22 years ago, as an active duty Marine, and I had a chance to take a few days of liberty in Australia with a friend of mine. We'll call this friend Mark to protect the guilty. Mark was a Christian, as was I, and so when we had a chance to get away from duty for a little while, we weren't allowed to be alone, so we would go together and we would look for opportunities to just pursue entertainment and purpose in ways that were different from a lot of our comrades. Mark was a great guy, and I enjoyed his company, but it could be a bit embarrassing sometimes to hang out with Mark. I remember one time when we were talking to some native Australians in Australia where he commented on how he liked their accent. Now, of course, we're the Yanks with accent, but he didn't seem to pick up on that. There's another time where he had we'd exchanged our money for Australian money, and he was looking at this Australian dollar that looked different from ours, and he pointed out to me some differences, and that was all well and good until he turned to, again, a native Australian and said, "Doesn't this money look weird to you?" Of course it didn't. See, it was their money and their language. It was familiar. It was ours that was different to them. But I think that sometimes familiarity breeds a bit of complacency. For instance, do you know how many muscles it takes to take a single step? It's about 200. And your ankles, your foot, your leg, your core, even your arms are involved in that. About 200 muscles to take a step. Or have you ever walked into a grocery store and have just been amazed by the abundance that's presented there? I think most of the time we're familiar with it and it never even registers. But you can get fresh produce from all over the world in our grocery stores. You can find an entire aisle full of cereal in 12 different brands and 50 different varieties. You can choose from breads and meat that's in abundance that we just don't even recognize most of the time. Have you ever gotten into a car and turned the key and wondered if it was going to start? I have. I mean, there's been times in my life where I've driven cars that there was always a prayer before I turned the key, just in the hopes that God would allow that car to start one more time. But for most of us, we turn the key and we expect fully that the car is going to start. There are other things I think that we take for granted. How often, though, does the Christmas story become one of those things that we just are familiar with, and so we're complacent? I wonder if we ever pause, even when we try to set aside the distractions of the world around us and the season around us and focus on the baby in the manger. I wonder how often it is that we are complacent in what we're talking about. See, Matthew in chapter 1, verse 22, he's recording what the angel said to Joseph. He told Joseph in 1:22 that all this took place to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. "Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Immanuel," which means God with us. I wonder how often we stop and pause and reflect on the scandal of what that means, Immanuel, God with us. That God took off everything that was rightfully his and became a man, that he put on flesh, that he took the form of a baby, that he became a baby. He was helpless and innocent and placed in a manger. That's scandalous, that God himself would come, live the life of a man, and not the best of us, not the most affluent and wealthy and privileged of us. He wasn't born in a castle, but he was born and placed in a manger. This Christmas, as you think about the birth of our Savior, don't lose sight of the scandal of Immanuel, God with us.